Bitcoin's blockchain data indicates renewed institutional appetite into the block data, showing on-chain transactions greater than $100,000 surged to a record 480 billion on Wednesday. In Bitcoin terms, that equates to a two-year high of over 10 million BTC. And earlier this week at the SALT conference, I spoke to Sam Bankman-Fried, CEO of crypto exchange FTX, trading firm Alameda Research, as well as co-founder of the Serum project. And we spoke about institutional adoption of crypto and his conversations with folks on Wall Street, including his former Jane Street Capital co-workers. Have a listen.
It's very different. I mean, obviously things have changed a lot for me in the last 5 years. And I mean, I think one of the craziest things to think about is just, I really liked it there. Like I had a lot of fun at Jane Street and really enjoyed it, really appreciated them. And I kind of didn't think I was ever going to leave when I was there. But it's definitely a little bit surreal, surreal being back. And I think that I still don't, it still feels a little bit out of place, playing games with ex-colleagues and not going to work with them the next day.
Well, have you gotten them interested in crypto? And are they starting to, are folks in Wall Street starting to bridge to the digital financial world?
A lot of people are starting to look into crypto from Wall Street. It's sort of all over the place. And I think it's much larger than the fraction of, market cap or whatever that crypto represents. Its sort of mind share is absolutely massive. Such a large fraction of the conversations going on in Wall Street right now are about crypto. And I mean, just look around. This isn't a crypto conference, right? This is a finance, but if you,
mainstream finance.
If you look at this row, I think half the companies are crypto companies. Right. Just looking at these booths here, crypto has really burst onto the scene in a really big way, especially I would say over the last year or so. And there's just sort of a momentum effect where a few companies started to get involved. And I think Paul Tudor Jones was one of the people who really started that movement off. But fast forward to where we are today, every major finance firm is talking about crypto now.
Speaking of which, your latest raise was $900 billion.
Yep.
At a 18 billion valuation. And you've been on this crazy marketing spree we just spoke to Kevin O'Leary earlier. Steve Curry just announced a spokesperson on FTX, Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, Major League Baseball, FTX Arena, formerly the Miami Heat Arena. So what does mass adoption in crypto look like to you when all is said and done with this marketing push?
So I think that when you look at sort of the size, obviously our user base has grown a lot from where it was, but it's still really small by most standards. So we have a few million users on FTX. For context, that's a few percent of what Coinbase and Binance have.
US or FTX?
They're both around a few million at this point, maybe 1 or 2 million each. And so, you put that in context of the 50 to 100 million users that Binance and Coinbase have, but then you compare that to the billion users who are trading equities and, the billions of users who are trading financial instruments in general worldwide. And it really is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think that a lot of what we've been thinking about is what can we do to reach out to tens to hundreds of millions of people in a way which carries some force with it, which is, and we could have tens of millions of Facebook ads. It wouldn't move the needle in that same way.
Do you see everyone, the financial world, just moving on to DEXs, moving on to crypto exchange platforms?
It's not happening tomorrow. And I mean, there's a lot of conversations going on, right? And we're talking with a lot of, asset managers, pension funds, trading firms, banks, investment banks from the financial industry who are all looking into crypto. A few of them have started trading or holding crypto. Others, they're investigating and they plan to, almost without any exceptions. All of them plan to start doing something with crypto over the next couple of years. But most of them haven't done it yet. Most of them are still in that planning phase. We'll see how it shakes out.
Speaking of which, SEC Chair Gary Gensler making some comments this week and saying that all trading platforms should probably register with the SEC. What are your thoughts when you see the U.S. regulators kind of investigating and zoning in on crypto?
There are a few different ways it could go. And what I'm hopeful for is that it's going to be a sort of collaborative, healthy growth for the industry, frankly, where platforms can get further licensed, where regimes will be built out and made explicit for crypto. And I think that when you look at the exchange side, when you look at the token side, when you look at the stablecoin side, when you look at the futures side, I think those are all places where we expect to see some movement. Obviously, we've been talking with the CFTC. We had the LedgerX acquisition, which we're really excited about. And I think we'd be excited to work with, with the SEC, with Gensler, on a lot of sort of common sense regulations and licensing that I think could exist for crypto exchanges. And that's the direction I'm hoping things are going to go in, rather than a more acrimonious direction.
Well, you're talking to the CFTC. Are you talking to the regulators as well? How are those conversations going?
Obviously, I don't want to sort of,
right.
don't want to get into too much detail, but overall, I think they're healthy. And overall, we are always excited to talk to regulators or any who want to reach out to us. We're super happy to have those conversations. I'm super happy to be involved. And, I think whether it's that we are helping to inform them, whether they're informing us, or whether we're talking together about how you might build out a framework that joins together multiple things in the crypto industry. Right now, U.S. crypto exchanges are sort of in the money transmitter regime, which is maybe not the regime that you would ultimately expect them to fall under. And I think that there's a big open question of what the future of that is. I think there are really healthy conversations out there.
What is it in the end?
Right.
But
right?
Speaking of which, I'm glad you're having good conversations with regulators and that they've been productive. On the other side, we've heard from Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, who's not having such a great time with his tweet storm saying the SEC is a bit sketchy. He's having trouble meeting regulators in person. So when you hear those remarks, do you relate?
I don't know what happened, obviously, behind closed doors, so I don't know what led up to that tweet storm, but something I can confidently say something went wrong before it got there. We never want to be in that position. We never want to be expressing frustration with regulators on Twitter.
And I
think, I think it's sort of a case where probably they're talking past each other. I'm guessing that Coinbase felt like they were failing to get guidance and help from the SEC and were instead just being viewed as an enemy, and where I suspect that the SEC felt like Coinbase maybe should have known better, should have been doing their own homework. I don't know for sure, but those are sort of the signs that you get from what people are saying there. I think that I would really hope that's not how things would play out, And we never want to end up there, right?
But is that why perhaps you live in Hong Kong?
So
you don't have to deal with all those issues as much.
It's a good question, and I think that certainly the U.S. regulatory infrastructure is not the easiest and most expedient to get through, but it is the most powerful and ultimately the most important. And I think that we have been engaging pretty actively with it over the last year. I expect that to be increasing rather than decreasing over time. And we have people who are ready to meet with regulators anytime. I'm happy to get on a call anytime and meet in person. And I think that this is clearly where things are going to be going. Mm-hmm. And I think that the best outcome is a collaborative one there. I do think that there have been other countries that were sort of faster to really think about crypto regulation and licensing. I think obviously you look at Singapore, right, with the MAS, who's been sort of a leader in that. You look at, I can't talk publicly about it, but I think a few other places that we've been talking with that I hope we're going to have announcements out very soon with. But
I did want to mention this Bloomberg report out that says the Financial Stability Oversight Council is looking to a formal review into whether Tether and other stablecoins threaten financial stability.
Right.
Do you think they threaten financial stability?
I don't think they do, and I do think they're extremely valuable. I think that they are great products, and frankly, they're really easy ways to settle transactions. They're really efficient. Whenever we can, we want to settle a transaction with stablecoin. It's just easiest. It's just cheapest. It's fastest. It's such a pain, to go back and say, okay, but what's the address of your bank account? No, not your address, your bank account's physical address of the bank, because that was a field that the form needed, and then get stuck in limbo for 2 weeks. It's so much easier to use them, and there's a reason that they're becoming an increasingly important part of someone. That being said, I think there's some totally reasonable oversight that you could see from them. And again, I don't know which direction things are going, but what I would hope is that the direction that oversight and regulation goes in is something like, an official regime where they have to fully and transparently disclose exactly what it is the assets that are backing a stablecoin are related to.
You do foresee that, or see that as
I think something like that is going to happen, and I think a sort of transparency-focused regime, focused on transparency and ensuring full backing, would be healthy, and I think it would help the field grow. I think I'd way rather see that than a fight between stablecoins and regulators where banning them was one of the things on the table, because I think that would be really sad, and I think it would really cut off a lot of the value that the industry has started providing.
Crosstalk has also raised a lot of questions about Tether in particular. So has the industry, as you know.
Yep.
And for a simple question such as, do you know who the CIO of Tether is? What's his name?
I don't know who the CIO is. I mean, I think there are a few members there who are very public, I think. But I think that's a classic case where transparency is what's needed. And I think that, getting on the same page with regulators about what should be disclosed.
Does it concern you that you don't know who is, or that they're really, want to keep that hidden? It's the name of the guy of their CIO.
I definitely hear you on that. And I mean, it's an unfortunate situation. There's been a lot of frustration, a lot of tension there, a lot of rumors. I do fundamentally think that Tether is backed. I do think that there are assets there.
FTX is heavily invested in Tether.
Right, and we ourselves aren't, but many of our users, do hold assets in Tether. It is a token that we support, and frankly, it's a really important one. It's been really important for the crypto industry, and it took on a really hard challenge at a time when no one else wanted to, which was banking, right? Rewind 6 years when almost no major exchanges had bank accounts, or at least stable bank accounts. And Tether was trying to provide fiat on-ramps and off-ramps for the entire industry. Lots of exchanges just farmed that out to Tether. They didn't bother having bank accounts themselves. They just supported Tether and let their users get in and out through Tether creations and redemptions. They got a lot of shit for that. They've gone through a lot. And I do think that it was coming. I made it a while. They helped support the industry for a while. And, I think that there are some pretty reasonable questions you can be asking about transparency there. And about, and I think that's sort of how this whole thing should have ended up, rather than the mess it's in now, is, I think that regulators probably should have come forward, or maybe they did. I don't know which side sort of, failed to do that dance here, but, and agreed, what's going to happen is transparency, right? There's going to be transparency around what the holdings are, and, holders can make informed decisions about it. I think that's a good first step, a healthy first step. And instead, what we've seen is lots of accusations, most of which, frankly, I think are at least partially false, combined with sort of a disengagement from the regulatory sector, which just creates unhappiness, tension, and uncertainty.